class main public static void main string args. I'm going to write a for loop that counts from 0 to 10 for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, plus plus I, system.out.println I. Copy this down into a new REPL, and that's where we're going to start today. Once you have that, modify the loop to count all the way up to 50. 50 exclusive, so 0 through 49. Once you have it counting up to 50, change it so it starts at 25 instead of 0. Counts from 25 up to 49 inclusive, or up to 50 exclusive. Once you have that, add a second for loop underneath it. So down here, you're going to write another for loop that starts at 10, counts down to 0, excluding the 0. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So to take our first loop and make it go up to 50, all we do is change that 10 to a 50. And we got all those numbers to make it start at 25. Instead of saying I equals 0, we have I equals 25. And then if we want to add a second for loop to count from 10 to 0, we start I at 10, so int I equals 10. We say I is greater than 0, and then we subtract 1 from I because we're counting down now instead of up. So all the way at the bottom here, I have my 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It starts with 10 because I is equal to 10. So we start with I equals 10. We check our condition. Is I greater than 0? Yes. So then we come in here and we print I. And what's I right now? It's 10. So we print 10. We exclude the 0 from it because we say, well, I is greater than 0. So that thing gets excluded because of the way I've written this. But I could write I is greater than or equal to 0, and that would include the 0. Today we're going to look at a new type, or a new type of type. We're going to look at our first data structure, which is called an array. It's used for when we want a variable that holds multiple values. So we had a while back this example. You can keep all this. I'm just going to get rid of it for space on my screen. Where we have first homework grade, and I set that equal to like 90, and then I had my second homework grade, and then I had my third homework grade equals 100. Creating a new variable every time you want one of these things, it doesn't work as you want more and more things, and it's just kind of sloppy. Instead, what we want is one variable that can refer to all three of them, and that's what we use an array for. The syntax for this is the type, followed by empty brackets. This means an array of integers. We'll say homework grades equals, and then you use braces with the values you want separated by commas. So 90, comma, 70, comma, 100, the semicolon at the end of it. And now I have my first array of homework grades. We can use this thing called an index operator to get the values out. So system.out.println, and then I can say homework grades 1 to look inside of it and get the element at index 1. And so if I say homework grades 1 and I print that out, it's going to print out 70, not 90, because it starts from 0. Yes, in computer science, we usually, or almost always, we start counting from 0. With arrays, we always start counting from 0. So the first one here is the 0th element, and then this one is the one at index 1. This is the one at index 2. So if I print out all of these, I want to start at 0, and then I want to go up to 2. So 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then I can print out those grades. So when I say 0, I'm talking about this guy, then 1 is here, and then the 100 is index 2. So these brackets are how you ask the array, give me your 0th element. Give me the element at index 0. Give me the element at index 1. Each one of these locations referred to as an index. One way to think about this is that the variable name homework grades is like a street, and each index is like a house number. So if I just said give me homework grades, that's asking for an entire block. You have to give it a number to say which one you want out of it. If I were to ask for an element that is out of the bounds of this, so homework grades 3, since this is out of bounds, there's only 3 elements, so 0, 1, and 2. I'm going to run this. I'm going to get an array index out of bounds exception. It tells me the index I used that didn't work, and it tells me what line that happened on. So main.java, and then line 12, which is right here. So it says on line 12, you tried to use index 3, and that was out of bounds, and just crashes the program. But notice that the numbers 90, 70, and 100 still get printed. Because unlike our other errors where, let's say I forgot a parenthesis here, that is the Java compiler saying, I don't understand what this code means. I can't generate a program for this, which is different than when I see an exception thrown. Exception in thread main. This is a runtime error. It means your program makes sense, but when it ran it, something went wrong. It makes sense to say, give me homework grades 3, but when it tries to actually do it, it can't do it because there is no third element, or there is no fourth element. There's no element at index 3, and the whole thing crashes. Copy this down without the out of bounds error, run it, and then what I want you to do is add a 4th entry to the homework grades array and print that as well. So you don't need those first 3 up there, that first homework grade, second, and third, because I'm not using those. Sorry, those are just for examples, so I can delete those 3 lines. You can just skip that since we're not actually using them, and just make the homework grades array. But you just go to your line 5, you say comma, and then let's say 60, and then you print that one out as well. But keep continuing to add homework grade, homework grade, homework grade. It's sloppy. Once we have that, I want you to make a brand new array, call it quiz grades, and put a few quiz grades in there. How many? Well, that's up to you. Just put them in there and then print them out. So after this part where I print out all the homework grades, you're going to make another array called quiz grades and then print out all of them. Put some values in there, whatever you want, and then print them out. So we want an array of ints, quiz grades equals, and then let's just put 3 of them in here. And then I'm going to print out each of these really tediously. Quiz grades sub 0, and then I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to duplicate that again. So we have elements at 0, 1, and 2. I see my homework grades printed out, then I see my quiz grades printed out. We can also use this index operator to modify the things stored in the array. Put this in here quick so you can clearly see where the division is drawn. If I do a few dashes there, if I run this, I should see the homework grades and then the dashes and then the quiz grades. So let's say there was a mistake. It shouldn't have been 70. It should have been 75. I can say homework grades 1 to refer to that 70, and then equals 75 to set it. So now we would expect the output over here to change from 70 to 75. And there we see it, 90 and then followed by 75. Just like other variables, values can change over time. We can assign to them, we can increase them, we can decrease them. It's not stuck to whatever we initialized it at. So add something like this to your code, whichever one you feel like changing. Change homework grades 1, change quiz grades 2, whatever. Change 3 of them. We're going to change this all. If I just printed out just quiz grades 1 here, and then I changed it, so quiz grades 1 equals 90, and then I printed it again, I should see 100 and then a 90 because I changed that variable. We also have a way to find out how many elements an array has. I can say number of quizzes, colon, and then I do quiz grades dot length, and that'll print out 3. Couple things to note here. Unlike string dot length, there's no parentheses at the end of this. It's just dot length. That's it. If you put the parentheses, you'll get the same error you got with string if you forgot them, which is cannot find symbol length. If I add another quiz grade up here, that number is going to go from 3 to 4. So this number here, it's not the highest index. It's the number of elements. The highest index is going to be the length minus 1. So the indexes go from 0, 1, 2, and 3, which is a total of 4 elements. Again, it's the number of elements, not the highest index. So if I ever did something like quiz grades dot length in hopes that I'll get the last element in the array, this won't work because it's going to be out of bounds. If I want to get the last element, I would have to subtract 1 from the length. The length here is 4, 4 minus 1 is 3, and the 3 refers to this one. So again, we always start indexing at 0. The repetitiveness though here is kind of annoying. If I say I want to print out all the homeworks, I have to print out homework 0, homework 1, homework 2, homework 3. If I add 2 more of them, I have to add 2 more print lines. But instead of repeating the same line over and over again, what do we have that we can use instead? We can do a for loop, and we can use our I, our counting variable, as the index into this. If I want to print out all of my quiz grades down here, I can start at I equals 0, and what's our maximum going to be? 4 exclusive, but if I delete an element from the array, then that code is going to break. If I just do I minus 4, or I is less than 4 here, I can't just do I is less than 4, because if I add elements or I get rid of elements, then that won't be right anymore. What can we do instead? Just less than quiz grades? Well, then you're just comparing an int to a bunch of ints, and that doesn't really make sense. Quiz grades dot length, right. Quiz grades length is 4 here, so this will go from I is 0, then to 1, then to 2, then to 3, and then 4 ends the loop. And then I'll do system.out.println, and instead of a 0 or 1 or 2, I'll do quiz grades sub I. If I say sub, that means index, at index I. I'm gonna get rid of this code on my screen. I think you guys will have this copied down, and we will step through this. Where do we start running our code? Always at the main function. What happens after we get inside of our main? So we're on line 3 now. What happens on line 3? We create an array, we put 4 grades into it. And what happens after that? It's gonna print number of quizzes 4. We're gonna expect to see that in our output. Number of quizzes, colon, 4. After we print out the length. So we create an int I, we set it equals 0. What happens after that? We check if it's less than the quiz grades.length. It's 4, so is I gonna be less than 4? Is that true or false? True. What do we do after that? We're not gonna do plus plus I yet, because we only did it at the end of the for loop. It's not gonna print the number I. What does this say here? At index I. And what is I right now? So what is the element at index 0 in this array? 30. So we're gonna print out 30. After we print out 30, what do? We're doing the plus plus I. So we're gonna add 1 to I, and I is now gonna be 1. Went from 0 to 1. What's next? What, this part? We only do this once. This is the initial setup. We only do this once before the loop runs. I is less than quiz grades.length. Now what is quiz grades.length? It's 4, and I is 1, so is this true or false? What do we do next? It goes to line 6. What is line 6 gonna do? It's gonna print out 100, because we're gonna go to quiz grade. We're gonna index it with I. I is now 1. The element at index 1 is 100, so we print out 100. What do we do after we print out 100? Go back to line 5. What do we do from there? We do plus plus I. We take that I that was 1. We add 1 to it, so now we have I is 2. After we do the update, what's our next step? What do we always do when we're at the top of our loop? We check the condition. If I is 2 right now, what's quiz grades.length? How many elements are in this array? There are 4 elements, so the length is 4. We do 2 is less than 4. Is that true or false? True. So we make our way back inside of the loop. We're gonna print out 20 because we have I is 2 here. So we ask quiz grades to give us the element at index 2. That element is 20, and we print out our 20. What happens next? We gotta do our update step. What's our update step? Plus I. So what is that gonna do to I? Increase it from what to what? It was 2 because we printed out the 20. So we're gonna go to what next? 20 is the element at index 2. So we had I equals 0, I equals 1, I equals 2. We came in here with I equals 2. That let us print out 20. So now we're gonna increase I by 1 from 2 to 3 plus I. It's an operation on the index, not on the array itself. We're not increasing anything in the array itself. We're just taking an index and moving that from 0 to 1 to 2 and then to 3. Before we go back into the loop body, what do we have to check? See if the condition is true. What's quizgrades.length and what is I? So is this condition true or false? It is true. What do we do now? Condition was true with I equals 3. So then what are we going to print? We're going to print 100 because we have I is equal to 3. This is the thing at index 3. Again, down here we say quizgrades element at index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. We got 100, so we print that out. What do we do next? We add 1 to I. That's going to take it from 3 to 4. What's next? Go to line 5, check the condition. What's quizgrades.length? What's I? So is this true or false? Okay, so we're false. So that means what? We're done with the loop. So we should see quizzes 4, and then 30, 100, 20, 100. Quizzes 4, 30, 100, 20, 100. And we get the output we expect. So we're just increasing the index by 1 every time, and then we're using that to index into the array, ask it for the element at that location, and print that element out. How about everyone just get this copied down? We can do things to this array inside of the for loop. So if I wanted to just set all my quiz grades to -1, so I'm going to create another for loop. So I'll still have the one that prints it out. Before I get there, I could do something like quiz grades I equals -1. That will set every grade to -1. So now we should just see a bunch of -1s printed. We're just indexing into it, assigning to it. I can also do modifications like plus equals. Like if I want to raise every grade by 5 points, I can do that. So instead of 30, 100, 20, 100, I see 35, 105, 25, 105. I went to the first one, I did plus equals 5, so that raised 30 to 35. I went to the second one, plus equals 5, raise 100 to 105, 20 to 25. So we can add 5 points to every quiz grade. You can set everything to 0. You can square every number in the array, whatever your program calls for. Yes. The way you do something like that is you assume that they're all less than 70, and then you just have to find one of them that's greater. So you create a Boolean all low, assume that everything is under 70, and then you say if quiz grades I greater than or equal to 70. I start with the assumption that they're all under 70, and then all I need to do to break that assumption is find one of them that's greater than or equal to 70. So if one of them is greater than or equal to 70, I say all low equals false. So I'll go through each one. If I find a single one that's greater than or equal to 70, I'll set all low to false, and then if I look at all low down here, it'll be false. If I set it to true, and this is not true for any of them, then it'll still be true after the loop. Yeah, so then after this, I could say if they're all low, and then do that same loop again. Let's just have everybody get this going, where we say quiz grades I plus equals 5. If you don't have that already, copy that down. In addition to just having arrays of integers, we can have arrays of strings. So I can say string brackets days. I'll just put some days in here. So I can say Monday, Tuesday, or if I just want the days this class meets, I can do this, Thursday, and then I can do the same kind of thing where I say int I equals 0, I is less than days.length, and then plus I. So I can iterate over an array of strings as well. This process of going through all the elements is called iterating through it. So each one of these is a string now. So this is the format, is you have brackets, the square brackets that tell you this is an array, and the thing to the left of it tells you what the type is. So it's an array of strings. I can also change this the same way I change the quizzes. So I could say just days 1 equals whatever, and that'll modify one of the elements. Anytime you need to modify something that's already in an array, just use the index operator and the equals. So just like we have things like plus and parentheses are function calls, and not all these things are operators, these brackets are a new operator called the index operator. You can get that all copied down, and then we will look at one other way to create an array. There will be instances where you know the size of the array that you want. Like if you know that there's going to be 7 homework grades, but you don't know what they are at the beginning, maybe the user is going to enter them later, something like that. There's one way where you could say int brackets, let's say lab grades. So if I know, let's say there's going to be 7 lab grades, I can do 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and that gives me 7 zeros to start with, and then I can assign to them later. But this doesn't scale very well. If we have to enter 1,000 of them, this doesn't scale to 1,000 because 1,000 zeros, it's hard to get it right, and it's just a lot of typing. Instead, what we can do is use the new operator, like scanner, where we say new, int, brackets, and then however many we want. So int brackets 7. This will create an array of zeros for us of size 7. So now if I was to just iterate through this, I should see a bunch of zeros. See my strings up here, and then I see my 7 zeros down here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the strings here. I'm going to make a new array called mynums, and I'm going to populate it or fill it with a bunch of random numbers. You might have seen the random stuff from the homework. Maybe if you don't remember it, that's fine. And I'll create another loop to print out those numbers. Forgot to index. And that's what you'll get if you forget to index. So there we go, a bunch of random numbers. I can say 10, and then I'll get a bunch of random numbers from 0 to 9. And each time I run this, I should get a different set of random numbers. You may have noticed today we've written the same loop over and over again, basically, where we say take an array of ints and print out every element. Rather than writing that over and over again, we can put it into its own function. So to do that, I start with public static void. I'll say print nums, and then I will take an argument that is of type array of integer, and then I'll do the exact same loop I have down in my main. And then instead of this here, I can just call print nums with that array, and we should still see everything get printed out. So this part here, the random part, you don't really need to worry about, but this line where I'm just creating an array of 7 things and I'm going to fill it later, you should have a record of that somewhere in your REPLs. So this is the function, public static void, because we're not returning anything. I'm taking an array of integers. So instead of taking one int, I'm taking an array of ints. That's the arguments of the function. I'm going to loop over each element in that array and print them out. The only part down here of these first lines that you really should care about is this one here where I create the array, 7 elements, and then the rest is just to fill it with random numbers. So I have something interesting to print rather than a bunch of zeros. Write a function, another function. So write a function that has the same header, print evens, which takes an array of nums. It should look almost identical to this one, but you'll need to use an if inside of the for loop and only print out the even numbers. So up here we have a function that takes an array of integers and it prints all of them. I want you to fill in this other function, print evens, which takes an array of integers, but only prints the even ones. So you're going to fill in what I have on line 11 here. So if I call print nums down here, I should see all the numbers. And then if I put a couple dashes down here to separate them, look at each element, see if it's even. If it's even, print it out. So to check if something's even, you use the mod operator, the percent. You mod it by 2. If the remainder is 0, that means it's even. So you'll have a loop, and inside of the loop, you'll have an if. You can use this to start, and then you just add an if inside of that. We're not printing the even indexes, we're just printing the even elements. So like up here, I print out 1, 0, 8, 6, 2, 1, 4. Instead, I should see 0, 8, 6, 2, and 4, but not the ones. Like it should skip 3, skip 9, print 6, print 8, print 6, print 8, print 4. So you're not checking whether the index is odd or even. You're checking whether the element itself, the thing in the array at that spot. New int means create an array of integers of size 7. This will be all zeros. This for loop here is what fills it with random numbers. For int I equals 0, I is less than nums dot length. So we're going to have the same system.out.println nums I here. This is the same as the loop right above it. The difference is instead of printing out all of them, you're only printing out the even numbers. So you know you need an if.
Okay.
If something, print it out. How do you check if it's even? You do nums I mod 2. You take the current element, you divide by 2, you get the remainder. If the remainder is 0, that means it's even. Now I have whatever random elements on top and then only the even ones below. Thank you everybody. Have a great day.